Have you ever wondered whether or not when you are raised to life, you could become a fish? Ludicrous? Not really. You'd be surprised what belief systems people have. Or you're raised to life and you become this poofy, cloudy kind of thing. No, that's not it either. Paul is trying to address in our next section of 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he's trying to address some relatively silly questions by calling somebody foolish. But we'll get into that, we'll take a look at it, and we'll see what kind of resurrection actually will occur according to God through St. Paul. So stick with us in this episode of The Word. We'll be right back.
Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path.
Do you believe that somebody would actually think that you could be raised as a fish? They do, all the time. I look at the Hindu religion, for example. They believe in reincarnation, not resurrection. There's a major difference, and I'm not going to spend the time on explaining the differences, but they're looking in the realm of reincarnated, meaning I die, I come back to life in another form, whether I'm another person, whether I'm an animal. I mean, the Hindu religion is the sacredness of the cow. So if you came back as a cow, wow, that'd be great. But the reality is that's somewhat of a foundation of this question that Paul is answering by saying, you foolish person, what are you even asking the question for? So we're going to get into the passage here from 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We'll start at verse 35. We are going to run through verse 41. So get ready to grab your Bibles, and when you do, we'll be ready for you with our study today. So you have your Bibles ready? Excellent. Let's dive in. But someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body do they come? You foolish person, what you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And what you sow is not the body that is to be, but a bare kernel, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain. But God gives it a body as He has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own body. For not all flesh is the same, but there is one kind for humans, another kind for animals, another for birds, and another for fish. There are heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is of one kind, and the glory of the earthly is of another. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars, for stars different from star in glory. So, we're looking at this question, what type of body will I have? Well, I'm going to have a resurrected body. Paul's going to even go deeper as we move forward, so I don't want to answer too much in the realm of the resurrected body. I want to give you what Paul is giving to them, the precursor to the rest of the story. And what is the story? Well, what is the story is you're not going to be raised as a fish. You're not going to be raised as a cow. You're not going to even be reincarnated. You're going to be raised. Think about it in this way. As Paul says here, he says, what you sow does not come to life unless it dies. That reinforces what Jesus said to Nicodemus, to believe in Jesus, even though he dies, yet will he live. So being a believer does not mean I'm not going to die. I am going to die. In the context of our funeral services, especially at the burial site, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, in the certain hope of the resurrection of all flesh. Let's use the example that Paul is using here. Paul is using the example of a grain, wheat, barley, corn, anything like that. So you've got a wheat, you plant a seed, it's it's dead. Okay? It's dead. So what we take for food actually is a dead, grassy product. Okay, that sounds a little weird. Moving off of that. But what it is you plant this dead seed, put it in the ground, water it, a miracle happens. It comes back to life. And it creates a plant. You start to see the green shoot coming up out of the ground, and it comes up out of the ground, and then at the appropriate time in its development, it begins to seed. It begins to create the seed pod, the head of the stalk, if you will. As it begins to create the head of the stalk, these are green seeds. They're living, they're growing, they're maturing. And as they mature, you're looking at this wonderful stalk and the life that God has given in this growth. And then as the season goes on, and in the context where I was pastoring in Idaho, they would continue to irrigate it to keep the plants alive and keep them moving until about the first part of August. Then they would stop watering it. They had to let the plant die. So when they came through with the combines and the harvesters and the collectors and the trailers and everything else like that, they were harvesting dried seed. Dried seed. And from that dried seed, dried dead seed, we get bread, we get all kinds of grains, we get all kinds of flours, we get all kinds of nutrition for us, for our bodies, and we get a dead seed that's going to come back to life again. And the cycle of life continues. It's not too far away from what the resurrection is. Through procreation, we are born. We are conceived. We are born. We live. We have this body, like you're looking at mine. Mine is unique. I'm like my father, especially in the hairline, but I'm a unique person. I'm growing, I'm living, I'm maturing, I'm developing all kinds of things. God is watering me. God is feeding me on His Word. My experiences and the congregation and all those other factors that go into my growth. But what's going to happen is eventually this will stop growing and it will start the process of dying. At some point in time, this body will die. At some point in time, this body will be buried and it will turn to dust as it was in the very beginning with Adam. And what does God do to this body? A miracle. He takes it from dust and ash and makes it another being. I'm not going to be a fish. I'm not going to be a bird. I'm not going to be a goat. That's what Paul's getting at into the second part of our section. He says, you know what? He says, but a bare kernel perhaps of wheat or some other grain. But God gives it a body as He has chosen, and each kind of seed of its own body. So we're not going to have crossovers. We're not going to have cross-pollinations. We're not going to have genetically engineered this, that, or the other thing. A human being will be raised imperishable. Got ahead of myself. A human being will be raised a human being. That's what it is. A cow is going to be raised a cow. A cat's going to be raised a cat. A dog's going to be raised a dog. You're getting my point. There's no crisscrossing. There's no something is going to become something else. Not going to happen. When we are raised as we were. We are raised as the kind of person, the kind of body that we are. That's what's going to happen in the resurrection. And to advance where we're going, there's going to be a fundamental difference between that which was laid to rest and that which is resurrected. We'll get to that, I believe, tomorrow. But don't 100% quote. There may be a section in between. But the bottom line here is this. The heavenly body that I'm going to have is going to be me. Now, to ask the question, which is kind of a modern phenomenon, well, at what age will I be raised? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at what age we're going to be raised. The fact is that we're going to be raised to life and live with God forever. That is the fundamental hope and promise that a believer has. So that's what we are going to look at. I'm going to be raised a human being when I get to heaven, when I get to the resurrection. Now, the condition of that resurrection, we're going to save that. Save that for tomorrow. And in the meantime, just remember, what dies is raised. It's raised in the same, it's raised as it was, and it will be raised by God. And now we're dealing with that last final point, by the way. What we're dealing with here is no more if questions. No more if questions with the presumed no answer. That's all done. Now we're strictly talking about, now that we discussed that there is a resurrection, this is what's going to happen. We'll get to that tomorrow and finish up this part on 1 Corinthians 15. And then we will get into 16 and go from there. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So if you have any comments, any questions, please put it in the comments section. Let me know what's going on with you. And if you're doing this as a study group and your study group has a question of me, one of you, put it in the comments section and I'll get to it. And in the meantime, you guys have a great day, great morning, great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow.